What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Dipped in Tone. I'm Rhett.
I'm Zach.
Today, we've got a really fun episode lined up for you guys. The one and only Ariel Posen is going to be joining us in just a minute.
That's right. Very excited. A good friend of mine.
Aficionado of low tunings, slides, and fuzzes. We get into that stuff. So,
great hair,
great tone,
personality, great tone. That's the three things that you need. So what's been going on with you? You've been busy. You've been a busy guy.
Yeah. We've been busy. I've learned a valuable lesson this year, which is that the power of saying no is important and something that needs to be embraced and used more. Because boy, have I just spread myself way too thin this year. So we've been busy working on a ton of stuff. Pretty standard, making videos, playing guitars,
old shit.
Went out for 2 shows with Good Trouble last weekend. Played Nashville, which was excellent, and then South Fulton, Kentucky, which was we played well. I'll just leave it at that. It was good. You came out to the show. Had a good time.
It's always fun to come see you because then everyone else comes too. Because it's ironic that I was talking to Morgan because we're getting our NAMM plans together, and she was like, who do you like to really hang out with? I was like, I like to hang out with Rhett and Corey and RJ. Like, wait, all the people I see all the time.
Yeah,
but it's always a good time getting to hang out, and
it was pretty nerve-wracking, man. Like there were some heavy hitter guitar players in that audience, and once we started, we played the Analog, which is a room I've never played before. It's a gorgeous room in Nashville, and we had a good turnout and everything. But it was like I was just seeing friends of mine walk in, and I was like, oh,
Tyler Bryant,
who got up and played with us. Yeah, Tyler, Graham, RJ, Benjamin Forehand. I was like, oh Jesus, there's real players in here.
Nashville, you did great, and your Two Rock slayed. It's I just wouldn't want to stand in front of it.
Yeah. So that's something else that's new. See it behind me here?
Oh, there it is.
The Two Rock, the classic Reverb signature 100 watt with the matching cabinet. Yeah, there's a video coming on that.
It's a beauty.
I took that out for 2 shows, and the poor people sitting in front of me. I mean, I had it on the 50 watt setting, and the master was as low as it would go. And I was every time I would lean into my boost or something for a solo, it was a couple, and the lady, I could just see her wincing,
just leaning back. Oh,
yeah. So what's new with you? What's been going on?
We wrapped the chorus. We announced it September 1st is the release. Thank you. They are all shipped. For the first initial batch, and we're just trying to get ready for that. But this weekend I'm going to Auburn for an event, and then the weekend after that I'm going to CME. So hopefully by the time this comes out, if you are in the Chicago area, Reverb CME Saturday the 26th, we're going to be there. They're just hosting a huge pedal builder event. Josh, Robert Keeley, Chase Blitt, everybody, literally everybody is going to be there. So
nice.
Come hang out. But
love it.
So before we get started, let's thank our patrons over on Patreon. If you go to the link in the description below, you can learn all about the tiers for supporting Dipped in Tone and join up with our lovely folks that support the show.
Yeah, you can get access to the Patreon member only Discord, which is cool little community over there. You can join in while we're taping live the show. So it's a great way to support us if you like what we do. Also subscribe. If you watch the show on a regular basis, subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on whatever podcasting platform you're listening to us on. It does help new people find the show. And also thank you to Sweetwater for sponsoring today's video.
Yes, we both are going through a season of purge.
Yes.
I have been getting rid of a lot of gear because I think both you and I have been looking around our closets full of stuff and gone, why do I have all this stuff? But of course, once you start selling things, then the coffers slowly refill and you go, wait a minute, what can I get? So the place to get stuff is sweetwater.com. You can get all the everything you need. Even if you don't just need a new guitar, chances are you're going to need new cables soon, power supply, pedal board, gig bag. I've got to do all these events, and I'm looking around going, damn, I really wish I had a double mono bag. Just go to Sweetwater.com.
Actually, and the thing I'm really excited about with Sweetwater now is they're moving into the sort of content creator market. So they're doing a lot of production stuff, camera stuff, lighting stuff, which for me is a huge help because I use this stuff day in and day out. And actually, a lot of guitar players are moving into, even if you just want to start posting, more of your playing on Instagram, get yourself a little interface that plugs right into your phone and makes, the whole production process easier. All that stuff's available, sweetwater.com. Thank you, Sweetwater, for sponsoring today's episode. And all the pertinent links are in the description.
Yeah. All right. So let's throw this over to the interview with Mr. Ariel Posen. Here we go.
Ariel.
Yo.
Welcome to the show, man. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to see you guys.
So glad you're here.
We have one thing we need to clear up before we get into the interview here. Zach, do you want to breach the subject?
Will you definitively tell everyone how to say your name? Because so many people get it wrong. And it drives me crazy. And I'm sure it drives you just absolutely nuts.
I've gotten to a point where having a name like mine is almost just... The pronunciation is super easy, but it just cannot be done. So I never correct anybody. However, since we are on a guitar podcast, I'm going to make this very easy for you. If everyone can say guitar and then say EL at the end, guitar EL, get rid of the git, REL.
There it is.
Boom. Easy.
Yeah.
Well, before we get into, because you've had a lot of things happen, even since the last time that I saw you, there's lots of stuff going on, but I found out something about you a long time ago, and I had forgotten about it. And when I was thinking about things to talk about, can we talk about Todd and the Book of Pure Evil for a second?
Yes.
So for those that don't know, Todd and the Book of Pure Evil was a TV show. I think it was a Canadian show.
Yeah.
That was kind of like if The Evil Dead and Shaun of the Dead happened in a high school and there were some guitar involved a little bit. There's some shredding that occurs.
Yeah.
And your hands are the hands that are being filmed during the shredding of all that show, or the first season anyway.
So first of all, you watched that show, or did you? I don't know how long it lasted.
I did. It was great. It's really campy and goofy and silly, but it's fun, and I love Shaun of the Dead and all that stuff. But how does something like that happen? Like, how do you fall into say, hey, you play guitar? Can I just film your hands?
Yeah, that's a great question. What a deep cut of a gig. So that was 13 years ago. We met, Zach, I think 2014 ish. So this was 4 years. But 4 years before that, I was primarily, hustling, working locally, doing tours, side manning it. And I think just through Winnipeg just has an organization called Manitoba Music where you can become a member and you're in this directory. So if, for example, a company called Carey Casting, which is like the local company that they use if they need extras or if they need to hire out anyone for film or TV, because they shoot so much stuff in Winnipeg, I think it's just because it's cheaper. Mm-hmm. They'll call out. So I don't know if this was through that directory. I think it was through word of mouth. I think they asked this friend of mine who's unfortunately no longer with us, but he was this great guitar player in the scene. If I ever had a mentor ish, it would be this guy Greg Lowe. And I'm 99% sure he pitched me for the gig. He didn't do it. So basically they just reached out and it was like stunt work. It was basically stunt guitar. I had never done anything like that before. I think I'd maybe been an extra in a film once and just have you guys ever done that? Been an extra?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Because I was going to say the experience is horse shit.
I have worked on a film set before in a musical context. So how did you actually do it? Did you pre-record the part? First of all, was it you actually playing in the show?
It was not me.
Okay, so you had to mime the part.
That's right. So I had to, it was like crazy shredding, sweeping, all this shit I don't even do, but I know how to fake it, but I don't know I couldn't really do it. So basically this guy in LA, I forget his name. He scored the entire show, and he did all the little in-between bits, and the show itself had at least the episodes, I don't know if it was more than one episode, but there were 2 guitar battles. And this guy is like guitar battling this dude. And another scene it's him in a cafeteria. And then there was another scene where he's like decked out like a dude from Prince. Sorry, what am I talking about? Prince from Kiss, having one of those days. And I think it was like against Satan or the devil. I don't know. It was so
tale as old as time.
Tale as old as time. They give you a call sheet. They go, hey, show up at 4 a.m. Not even joking. That's film life for you. Get makeup, hair. You're going to potentially be filming between this time and this time, but be prepared to be here all day. Here is the 2 tracks you need to learn and memorize. So, it's like an 18-second solo and then another 14 to 18 seconds. And even though I wasn't really playing, it was difficult. I remember struggling just to not only memorize it, but just make it look convincing. Now, for us, the 3 of us here watching, it's easy to know, like, oh, you miming. But the average film person and director, producer, you could kind of be playing it almost incorrectly, and they go, oh yeah, this is great.
Looks great.
I think I did a good job. I think I like tried to mime it as well as I could. But yeah, it was just an interesting experience. There was a huge, the lunchroom scene was like 30 people in this cafeteria, and I had to do it like 15 times. Sometimes they were like, can you do it a bit this way? Or can you do it this way? We need to get a close up now. It's really funny too, because I'm a very bad nail biter my whole life. I've been chomping in the bit, so to speak. So they're getting up close. I'm like, hey guys, just so you know, the nails are hideous. They're like, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Don't worry.
We'll fix it in post. Don't worry about it.
We'll fix it in the marketing. And the other scene, same thing. It was in this like a bigger sound stage they just built a sound stage in this gymnasium. This was all at a school called TechVoc in Winnipeg. And yeah, also took a few tries. They were like, that one section doesn't look correct. I'm like, okay, maybe you're right. Can I hear it one more time? And they played it and took a few times, and they wanted close-ups. And the biggest piss off was I wasn't really rocking a beard yet. I started committing to having a beard like 2012, but I always had the musician shadow or the musician shag going on. And I showed up to hair. They never told me this. They're like, what are you doing? I was like, what do you mean? What am I doing? I'm here for hair and makeup. They're like, you're not clean shaven. I'm like, oh, was I supposed to be or what? You didn't tell. So they made me shave on the spot with a dry razor. I'm bleeding all over the place at 4:30 in the morning going, what the fuck is going on? Man. And then they put me in full Kiss makeup for this battle scene. And of course you never see my face. You never see anything above my stomach. And that's just the world of film and TV.
Man, I've never talked about this, but in 2017, I got a gig, the summer of 2017. So Atlanta is huge in film and TV production now. Like almost everything seemingly is shot here in Atlanta. Yeah. And I got a gig through Rick Beato, actually, where this is before he was on YouTube or anything, where I was working for him at the studio, and we got hired by this film company, this I'm not going to name any names because this was a horrible experience, the worst gig I've ever had. But anyways, it was a musical TV show. Think like Glee, but a little bit different. So musical high school, and this all, the whole season's about these characters and everything. So we got hired as a studio to do all of the cast pre-records. So we would bring these actors in and record their vocals and heavily auto-tune and fix them. And then I would go on set on days where they were actually filming those scenes to make sure that they looked like they knew what they were doing. Because oftentimes there'd be like a band on set or they'd be in a studio. So I was like this musical consultant, basically. Yeah. And that was my first time ever doing anything in the film industry. It's the worst experience I've ever had. There's not enough money in the world that would ever get me back on a film set ever. It was the most toxic, high pressure, high stress gig. And I got completely thrown in the deep end, man. Nobody, like, I showed up on a film set, didn't know anything, didn't know how to read the call sheet. I was late half the time because I couldn't understand didn't know where I was supposed to stand, who I was supposed to talk to. And yeah, it was nuts. So, but yeah, you started talking about that, and it started unlocking this core memory for me of like getting yelled at by a music supervisor for something that wasn't my job. And yeah, not a great time.
That was very similar in the sense that, like, I remember being on set and they're just like, everyone expects you to just know how it goes.
Uh-huh.
These guys and gals they're working crew or they're set or they're actors, directors, whatever. They're just like, oh, don't you know? Like, I was like, I don't know shit.
Yeah, man.
I'm just a guitar player, dude.
I don't know how people do it, man. It's you think touring and stuff is high stress and being on big tours, dude, it is nothing compared to a film set. Like, those people are just hanging on by a thread, it seems. So,
oh yeah. I mean, when they're you better believe those, like, they're shooting those Marvel movies at Pinewood, right?
Uh-huh. There's Atlanta, a lot of big studios here. Yeah.
And they're definitely they get in, same thing. You're there at 4 a.m. You know, it's a bit cushy. You got your own dressing room, I'm sure, and whatnot. But those hours, I don't care if you're Robert Downey Jr. or you're us being an extra in Guardians of the Galaxy, which we're not. But if they're hiring, I think the three of us would like that position maybe. But it sucks. It's grueling and it's grim. And, like, it makes you wonder, yes, they do get paid a lot, maybe too much. But at the same time, when it takes 4 months to shoot like a movie and, like, you commit your time in a way, I mean, it's just based on the money that it makes, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is a grind.
It's a grind,
agreed.
Man.
Yeah.
So I want to turn the page slightly here. So getting back to guitar, it seems nowadays, and I see this with you, I see this with other well-known slide players, Dylan Adams, for example, comes to mind. Anytime you make a post on any social media outlet that is featuring slide playing, it seems to me that half of the comments are asking about what tuning are you using? What tuning? So let's talk about your tuning. What are you using? How did you get there? Why do you use it? All that.
Funny enough, the question I get asked the most is, what is the slide? Which works great when you have your own brand.
Which I actually have one right here. I have one of your slides with my logo on it because we were testing them out. But this is actually, like, one of my favorite slides. Shout out to the rock slide. But
available next month, the Rhett Shell Ariel Posen amalgam slide.
The collab slide. I don't think people are supposed to know this exists, but this is just a test pressing. So there you go.
Danny's funny like that. Yeah, they asked me what the slide is. Tuning wise, I started playing slide way before I ever learned any other tunings. I just played in standard tuning. I was learning, like, George Harrison lines and stuff like that. And I didn't even think in my head, hey, if I change the tuning, maybe there's a different sound. Maybe it's easier. It wasn't until I started listening to a guy named Kevin Breit, who's a Canadian guy, my favorite guitar player, hands down in the world. He's the first guy that I heard playing slide where it really spoke to me, and it was innovative and interesting. Not to say that all the legends are not interesting. And I'd seen Derek Trucks before. Me, along with the other 1,000 people in the room, are like, well, that's as good as it ever will get. Like, it doesn't get better than that. But I never had the feeling of, that's what I want to sound like. When I listened to Kevin, I had this, that's kind of how I hear music and slide. And just very innovative. He took chances. He's like, it's almost like he didn't give a fuck. He just, like, goes with what he's feeling, and then you either crash, you burn. And therefore it's so much more interesting, and you're, like, on the edge of the seat listening because you don't know what's going to happen. But it was so moving, like the way he'd use chordal stuff and play a little bit behind the slide, and the way he would kind of mix droning of strings and chords with movements with the slide. And immediately, hook, line, and sinker, I was like, that's everything to me. I never was moved really by, like, the Duane Allman kind of, or, like, the more bluesier rock style, like the classic things. And again, there's nothing against that. It's timeless and killer. It's just not what spoke to me. So rather than coming from it from that angle, can't speak today. It was this other side, and that kind of bled into how I approached slide, like on sideman gigs, because there would be times where I just, a lot of roots music or rock or country, you play slide, and I think a mixture of being inspired by it, and I think I clicked with it. I think there was like a connection with it where people would be like, hey, that sounded good. You know, this other song doesn't have slide on the record, but why don't you just play it? And I was, okay, sure. And then just kind of went from there. I guess that was the upbringing. And then, through Kevin, I started exploring open tuning, which was open E. I took a guitar that I wasn't so precious about, tuned it to open E, and I would take it on every gig, with the exception of gigs that really were important. You know, I'm talking a gig that was 3 sets at a bar that no one was listening to. I'm talking about a showcase gig for an artist where the songs you could have played hanging upside down from a skyscraper and sleeping. Just like very simple stuff where I knew that I wouldn't crash and burn. I'd do it. And just by doing, I learned, okay, major is now a minor 7 chord. Major 7 chord is now it's like what was a minor 6 voicing, and all these things in my brain started changing. I figured out like the basic scales as far as I needed to get, very still rudimentary in terms of knowing the fretboard. And it was more just throwing myself into the fire, a lot of trial by fire, a lot of, oops, sorry, you know, but by doing that over and over again, it taught me the fretboard in a different way. And I did it enough where I was like, okay, standard tuning guitar is guitar, and open tuning is like just another voice of it. It's like almost more piano-y to me. It's not this bluesier thing. It's just actually more of a melodic left hand, right hand sounding thing. And yeah, I was always drawn to both. I never had like I need to just commit to one. I loved the idea of switching between because I'd get really inspired. Sorry, I feel like I've been talking for 10 minutes.
No, this is great. This is perfect.
I'd be writing or I'd be playing in standard tuning. And then after a while, you get in a rut, it gets a little stale, and it's like, I don't know where to go from here. And you switch the tuning on 3 of the strings. And it's like, it's a brand new instrument, and you look at it a different way, and you sit on that for a while, and then you go back and it's fresh again in standard tuning. And I just love that. It's like playing 2 instruments, but they're the same instrument, if that makes sense. So those are the only 2 tunings I play in. Open tuning, like open E intervals, or but in D, D flat, C, E flat. I like, if you give me open G or dad gad even, I'm screwed. Like it trips me up like crazy.
Well, the way I like to think about open G is it's just open E, but from the 5th string. So you just pretend the 6th string's not even there, and it's the same voicing. So open E was your gateway drug into the open. And I love how you said it's more piano-like, because it is. It sort of changes how you approach the guitar and the voicings and your melodic choices. But what then led you to go from open E down to D or C sharp?
Well, Kevin Breit, listening to him, was doing it, and it never dawned on me that you could even tune a guitar differently outside of E. I was like, well, let's drop D. I get that. I grew up in the era where Korn, Limp Bizkit.
Yeah.
It was very popular at one time, and we'd all be trying to. None of us had a 7 string. It was like, how do these sounds happen? I remember listening to like Big Wreck, for example. That's a band that was gigantic in Canada before kind of branching out. And I feel like they've had a second revival in the last decade, which is awesome. But I was like, how do these guitars sound so big? It never dawned on me, oh, you can just tune down. So I started tuning down and experimenting. And in time, I learned I was doing that, and I was doing random experimentation, and In the Landreths, we had a couple guitars where we would, like, obviously Joey plays in C, but I'd bring a couple guitars in the road and I tune down, and it was like, oh, I get it. Like matching the tension. It's because if you tune down, it's not going to like 11s. You know, if I'm in E with 11s, if I go to D, maybe it should be 12s or 13s. If I go down to C, maybe it should be 15 or 16. And it just made this, I'm never a math guy. This is the most math I've ever been. It's like distinguishing numbers and basically weight and physics towards it. And from there, and then still, it became an interesting and drawing kind of sound. Obviously listened a lot to, I feel like when Blake Mills put out Heigh Ho, a lot of guitar players, again, 2014, end of 2014, first song on the record, If I'm Unworthy, everyone heard that open D flat or C sharp thing. And it was just like, well, that's what we're all doing now, I guess. You know, it was very inspiring for a lot of people, including myself. Yeah.
Is there a tuning, or because I mean, switching between the two, when you get comfortable with that is awesome, and I feel like that's why so many people have kind of leaned one direction or the other. But is there a tuning that you gravitate towards, like if you're going to write or experiment? Do you have like a starting point? Is that usually just standard, you know, E tuning, or where are you going for that?
I'll start in standard E. Mm-hmm. If I write with someone, I'll honestly just grab anything. I don't go in thinking this is going to be a baritone B to B kind of thing. I just see what happens. And then oftentimes I'll write something, because at the end of the day, it's just chords. It's just music.
Yeah.
I'll explore more with it and get deeper with it, you know, with textures and like in the pre-production and the recording phase of like putting something together and like picking. It's all about that. Okay, I'm all over the place, but that was a huge thing. Was, you know, you're recording a guitar track or you're recording a song. If you have like 8 tracks that are all just standard tuning, even if you put a capo here and there, it kind of sounds just. They kind of get messy. And I'm going to say this. I'm a huge Foo Fighters fan. Huge. I saw them twice last month. They came to town. I saw them play to 80,000 people. And then 2 nights later, they played a hockey arena to 3,000 people. And both nights, it sounded amazing. But there's 3 guitar players all playing in the same range. And it was hard to, you know, it was a little... It wasn't messy sounding, but when you have so many guitars in the same range, in the same position, and really tuned the same way, it's hard for stuff to poke out when it needs to. Even if your front of house is like as much on the ball as their guy was. It sounded amazing, but like it really reminded me of putting tracks together where it's all the same stuff. So it was really in a recording scenario where it was like, okay, it'd be really cool to do some sprays or some donuts, diamonds with like a standard tune here, and then I'm going to double it in open D with just in first position, and it just gives it such depth and different kind of body, which is very cool. So that's a big part of it.
Yeah, it's almost like there's something about when you tune a guitar down, even when you go to a heavier string gauge, it's almost like the harmonic structure of what's coming out of the guitar is changing, like the voice of the guitar is changing. And I'm not exactly sure why that is. I have some ideas, but especially like, you know, strats, for example, I have gotten to the point where I almost don't like a strat in E standard. I want to hear it in E flat or D standard, because it's something about the scale length and those single coil pickups that just the guitar opens up and it inspires you to play differently. So, you know, on this tuning thing, I think there's a lot of guitar players out there that could benefit from experimenting with open tunings. What would you tell someone who's maybe like getting open tuning curious? You know, maybe they're thinking about switching a guitar from standard to open E or something.
I think you found our title, Rhett.
Open tuning curious.
Yeah. Hands down. And whenever I give the odd lesson, I say, if you're looking to get into, because everyone that comes for a lesson, they want to play in B standard, which is probably the tuning I've gravitated to the most. Down a fourth in standard tuning. When I do Ariel Posen music, when I do everything else, I'm still primarily in standard. But for open, got to start in open E, because it's already hard enough when certain strings are going to be changing for you. Why make it harder and transpose right at the gate when at least your E to E notes are going to be in the same place as you know them. It's just the guts inside are going to slightly change. And I just say, take everything you know in standard and just sit down. There's no rush. There's no time limit. You know, if it's a little difficult, that's fine. But just work out the things you already know in open tuning. It's just a matter of, oops, no. Oh, there it is. And you find it, eventually memorize it, and it becomes muscle memory, just like standard tuning is muscle memory. Guitar is maybe one of the most muscle memory instruments out of all the instruments. And you just have to make it you just have to pull it into your brain so that you never have to think about it. But if you're going to start with like open D or open C right out the gate, yeah, you can learn the basic chord shapes, the tenths with like the open strings on the top. It sounds pretty, but you're not really going to know where you are. You're not really going to be making the kind of music that you're really wanting to, because you're going to be limited by not fully knowing the fretboard yet. And you'll be like halfway there if you just start an open E.
Yeah.
That's what I'd say.
So
nice.
You have some new music coming. I don't know how much we can divulge because I got sent all the stuff and I want to check it out, but I'm not going to say any dates or names or anything. So can we talk about what's coming next for you? Because we listened to it and there's a lot of things to talk about. So
it's coming out very soon. Let's
should we just say that?
It's all good.
Do we have dates?
Album's out on September 8th.
Okay.
And we start tour in 8 days. So it's about to get busy.
Yeah.
So in the description, we'll have links to everything, to Ariel's tour dates, albums, anything that we're talking about today, you can find in the show notes if you're listening, or in the video description here on YouTube. So, yeah.
In the release that we got, we were, I was reading through it. It says you wrote 30 songs and had to whittle it down to 10. Yeah. So can we talk about the creative process for you and how that, how does that look when you say, okay, we're gonna do this? Where does it begin? And then how, when you're getting to that point where you have to really decide and say, hey, look, this is good enough for the record, or this is what I want on the record. What does that look like? Can we talk a little bit about how you go through that songwriting process?
Let me give some pretext here. So my first record, How Long? I had 7 songs to my name. That's all I had. And that's all I recorded. I recorded 7 songs with 3 little 1-minute guitar interludes. So it would be a 10-track record. Really, it should be an EP. That's all I had. We went with it. My second record, Headway, I got more comfortable and had more time in between. And I had 20 songs. Decided to record 12 of them. Why? Because the more songs I had, it became clear which were the strongest. And it's not that the 8 that didn't make it weren't good, just in terms of cohesion and like a listening experience, those 12 were the ones. For this record, first of all, we were just a few months into lockdown time. Mm-hmm. And while it took me a few months to start feeling creative again, I'm sure the same with you guys. It was like Christmas for creativity. I was just like, every day I was wanting to write. Every day I was feeling inspired. All my friends and colleagues were at home and they were feeling the same way. It was a lot of collaboration and co-writing. And I just took advantage of it. And for me, songwriting is even just like having a career in music. It's like, who knows? The next day is never guaranteed. We really never know what's coming. We never really know how things are going to go. Hit it as hard as you can, because you never know. And with songwriting, when it feels good, like I just keep it going, because once I go on tour, once I'm doing other things, I do not have one creative bone in my body linked to songwriting. It's just too much mental capacity being used otherwise. So we were in a time where nothing else was really going on. I was writing daily or every couple days, maybe like 2 to 3 days a week, which for me is a lot. I'm not like a sit down every day and try to write an idea. It needs to just kind of happen. And 30 songs eventually. And whenever I am writing, if I'm really passionate about a song, if I think it's got potential to have life beyond the work tape or voice memo on my phone, I'll demo it, program drums, or I'll get someone to play on it. I'll play everything and sing on it. 1 or 2 takes, like not spend a lot of time, but just enough to have something for reference. And once I do that, trying to avoid demoitis, which if anyone doesn't know what demoitis is, it's when you just reference your demos too much. And when you do the real thing, you're so attached to it that you can't really see outside. And sometimes that can be a detriment. I just did that process, figured I had 15 songs that I really thought were strong. 10 felt like, yes, this is definitely a record. And 5 of them also felt like this should be something, but I don't hear it with these songs that I picked for the record. So 5 of those songs were actually released a year ago. I put out an EP called the Downtown EP. And the reason was I basically didn't hear them together. I loved them and I just wanted to put them separately. So that was just a little side project. I still wanted to get those songs in the world. We did it all remotely. Ash played drums on them. The rest of my band played remotely from their homes. And it was just a fun little thing to do. But these 10 songs, this was like, I thought these were the strongest songs I'd written yet. And by having so much time to really push them against the other 20 that I had, it was clear to me that these would be the ones to move forward. And then we did.
It's interesting listening to the record. Like, I think to me, I can really hear your progression as a songwriter, and these songs feel, well, I guess what I want to ask is, can you tell us more about the nuts and bolts of your creative songwriting process? So you mentioned you only write 2 or 3 days a week. Is that something where you're sort of scheduling that in, where you're saying, okay, tomorrow I'm going to write and I'm going to focus on getting a song or a demo done? Or is it just that you wake up that morning with an idea and you just have to get it out? And then once you're actually writing, what does that actually look like for you? Are you sitting down with an acoustic and a notepad, or are you building a track out? How does that work?
Okay, so in terms of scheduling, if I'm writing something just on my own, almost never is it planned. That's just me. I pick up a guitar. I either plug in, or I don't plug in, and I just mess around, and something might hit me and I go, interesting. And I hit the voice memo. Or I could be out walking sometimes. I get my best ideas if I go hiking or if I go for a jog and I have like nothing. I'm not even listening to music. And it's like first 4 lines of this song, and I just text them to myself or write it. That happens a lot. If I'm co-writing with someone, that's scheduled, obviously. And that is something I'm like, okay, Wednesday, I need to show up with an idea, because if I'm co-writing with somebody potentially for my own song, it has to be my idea. It has to be something I bring. I collaborate and I write with a lot of people for their own projects, and I love doing that. And it's always easier when it's not your own song. But for mine, it doesn't feel genuine in my own song if it's something that I'm not bringing. So if I know something's coming, I'll intentionally sit down and try to just come up with something so that I'm ready and I have at least a chorus idea or a verse idea and some chords. Now, when your other question, what the writing process is like, it's just me sitting at the computer. I just find it more efficient these days to type it than do the old school way. So I'll type it if we live in such a good time for this kind of thing, because how many times have you guys written something and it's like, should we have a coffee? Yeah. And then you come back and you're like, oh my God, what was that like bridge section we'd written? Like, I totally forget it now. So right. I'm always like documenting, I'm always recording just to avoid that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'm not precious about if it's an acoustic, if it's an electric. It really comes down to like, if my wife's home, do I need to be a little more quiet? Then I'll probably just do an unplugged electric, or I'll go headphones. If I'm by myself, who knows? It's really just what I feel like grabbing. It's more so in the recording and the demoing part where I'll just listen, feel what it needs. I have my tendencies. We all have our things, Rhett, I know you produce. Zach, I know you're always recording. You're making tracks and stuff too, right?
Yeah, I'm doing that now for all my demos.
For demos and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, it's the same process. We all have our like go-tos and our things that we have. Like, okay, I know I'm going to throw down one of these. I'm going to throw down like this ARP thing I always do. I'm going to put like a fuzz thing on the last chorus because that's what I always do. For me, it's like chords. I'm like, okay, I'm always going to do a 2 major to the 4 minor. So this was the first record where I caught myself doing a lot of those things that I always do. And I went, oh, run the other way, try something else.
Yeah.
And I made a conscious decision to just try new stuff.
So I think there's a lot of guitar players out there, myself included, that have come up primarily being guitar players and identifying as a guitar player. And then as you get a little older and more experienced, you realize like, well, no, actually there's more to this pursuit of music than just playing guitar. And they're starting to get a little more interested in writing. But some things, like for myself, as an example, I do produce a lot. I'm working with artists and I do co-writes, but I'm more in the musical side of things. And I'm finding myself getting more curious and interested in lyric writing, but that's been a huge challenge. So is that something that you struggled with early on in your writing, or were you always just kind of like working with words and lyric ideas?
Most days I feel like I still struggle with it. Some people just have their strengths. I started writing songs and lyrics when I was, I'd say let's say, call it like almost 20 years ago. And you have to start from nothing. You have to kind of start somewhere and just throw yourself into it and be like, this doesn't sing well, or I'm not really singing metaphorically here. I'm just kind of saying words, and that's fine to start. You have to start somewhere. You know, I know a lot of people and have a lot of friends that they're constantly just writing down ideas in journals or on their phone. They just constantly have words and ideas and cadences in their head. I'm just not like that. If I know directly what I'm writing about in a song, it's a lot easier. I think so many times we struggle to write because there's a few reasons. We're afraid. We're a little self-conscious, and we're like, what if people think this is stupid? B, you're like, this is a little personal maybe, and I don't know that I want to put this out there. And 3, there's like the purists aren't going to think I'm speaking elegantly enough. You know, like think of Jason Isbell, who's maybe the GOAT. And anytime you listen to one of his songs, you listen and you're like, oh, I could have thought of that. And that's how good it is that it's so complex, yet so simple and accessible and relatable. It's almost like you got to go over this hump of complexity and detail when you realize, wait a minute, you just have to just be honest and authentic and genuine with what you're saying and just really tell a story and make it make sense. And the more honest you are, it's a lot easier to write. So what helps me is just pushing the noise out and not worrying so much about what I think people are going to think. Because in anything we do, especially in art, if you want to be an artist, you can't care what people do. You have to kind of make it for yourself first, right?
Yep.
And then you just hope for the best. Lyrics, I will admit, is I have good days and bad days, and I definitely have more tough days than I do with music. If you're like, hey, can you give me an arrangement of some chords that comes like clockwork to me. It's the lyrics that don't, but that's just how it is for me. I'd say if I had to give any advice, it's like going to the gym. The more you write and the more you get your brain used to like putting words together, it gets easier.
Yeah.
And it's like you're more in shape. Your conditioning's up.
I've been trying, like you said, to do more of the pedal demo thing, and not use like pre-recorded stuff. I've been using a lot of drum loops because I can't program drums. I'm not good at that stuff, but I find myself really struggling. Making a pedal demo is an interesting thing. I'm not really writing a song. It's just a snippet and a showcase, but I'm struggling to figure out how to do not the same thing every time, just to a different drum beat. And, it's been quite like it's quite the learning experience, because I've played guitar for 20 something years, but I've done a lot of writing, mostly on acoustic, like trying to write songs, but trying to write riffs and things that's listenable and exciting for people is so difficult, especially when I have like my style and my vibe, but trying to make something that sounds musical and fun to listen to is really, really hard. So yeah, the fact that what you're talking about, like doing the same thing over and over again, and just having to turn your brain off and run the other way, is something that I think a lot of people might not realize they need to do, because sometimes, there's one thing of like having a sound and a feel. And I feel like a lot of your like more up tempo and like higher gain stuff has like a real groove to it, but they don't feel all like, oh, that's the same song and that's the same song. But I feel like a lot of people kind of fall into that trap. So to me, that's great advice, because I'm literally going through it right now. I'm trying to make a demo for the Mjolnir, and it's kicking my ass for no reason other than I just like what, how do I make a chord progression? I don't know.
Yeah. Let me just say as a side note, because most people that watch or listen to this haven't heard Zach play guitar in the same room in real life. Zach, to this day, I've always called it the Zach scrape. I don't know why. I've called it that before. You have maybe the best actual tone out of your hands.
Wow.
Something about the way I've always said that, I've said this to you before. Mm-hmm. The way you attack, you just get something out of the guitar acoustically, even if you just play a Les Paul not plugged in. You have this thing that you really only experience if you're in the same room with you. And it's a magical thing. Just wanted to say that.
Can confirm, actually.
Yeah.
I will add on to that. You do have excellent touch. And it's funny, like, Zach and I always go back and forth on pedal boards, and he's much more simplistic, but I think it's because you are at your best when you're plugged straight into an amp, and it's just a guitar and amp interacting together. So
yeah, isn't that ironic?
Yeah, get all that pedal bullshit out of there, man, honestly.
Oh, man.
So speaking of pedals, Ariel, let's talk about fuzz.
Yeah.
So you are you're a fellow fuzz aficionado, fuzz evangelist, if I may.
Yes.
What's your approach to fuzz? Because the world of fuzz, as you know, is wide and wonderful and deep. And it's not a one size fits all type of effect. There's a lot of nuance and detail that even go into fuzz pedals of the same make, tone benders, for example, or fuzz faces. Depending on the tolerances of the parts inside, they all kind of sound different. So what do you look for with a great fuzz tone? So like there's a song on your new record, Man You Raised, where there's a great octave fuzz solo towards the end, which is slamming. So yeah, tell me about your fuzz approach.
Okay, well, funny enough, that song is an Argo.
Hey.
Yeah, it's the Argo that I've been asking for years for Zach to make in a small with the setting.
I know. So for those listening at home, Ariel has texted me about this for a long time, years now, about like shrinking it down and having like not the Argonaut, because that's a totally different circuit, but make the Argo just like one thing, one knob, and put everything else inside. And I swear it is on the docket. And then like other major projects get like, oh, I got to get the chorus done or these other things. But I'm going to finish that damn thing. I promise.
It is selfish. It is, I get it. It's something that I only use a certain way, and I just want it smaller. So it's a little selfish. So it's all good.
One day it will in the comments, everybody listening, how bad would you want a miniature AP Argo? That
take me there. Yeah, that's what I want.
Okay.
I want that.
All right. We'll do it one day. I promise. Next year.
So the way I use that pedal is the same I'd use like a Zonk style pedal or a fuzz face. I mean, that Argo is a little different. It's very like it's spitty, but sounds like you're taking paper and ripping it in the most satisfying way. And I just love that. But no fuzz pedal like that can get the sound I want without an overdrive after it. That's the essential ingredient for me. I don't love fuzz on its own. There's the odd time, maybe on a session or recording, it really has its place and sounds beautiful. But for live, which is the main thing I do, is like I need to have it this certain way. So the way I like to have fuzz is almost no gain. I find when there's too much fuzz, when there's too much gain on a fuzz, it kind of gets a little saturated, a little clippy, a little fizzy, almost too high gain. And it loses the essence of what I think a fuzz should be, which should be like this blooming sound, like this gigantic, pillowy, bloomy, gigantic thing, like a mushroom or something. That doesn't sound so satisfying, but you know what I mean, right?
Mushroom fuzz. We got it.
Hell yeah, man.
Yeah. So yeah, I find by having the gain come from the overdrive pedal, it lets the fuzz act as like a headroom thing more. And I really appreciate you saying I'm an aficionado of fuzz. I kind of like don't know shit. I do, but I don't. I know what I like. And I use every fuzz the way I think I like to. And that's just what I do. And it works for me. And it's just kind of, I have volume pinned on fuzz, and I'll have gain at like 2 or 3. Bias, depending, that's a whole different discussion. And that really comes down, again, for maybe a track. It might call for something more spitty, maybe not. 9 out of 10 times for an AP show, I like it just to be open, big, kind of like punching you in the face.
So what is the overdrive after the fuzz accomplishing?
Well, the overdrive after the fuzz is on always. I am never playing just clean into an amp, really. I always have the overdrive on. And I really started doing this maybe 7 or 8 years ago. And it's like the Jeff Beck thing. I remember the first time I saw him, and it was like, okay, I think I get it now. I'd be toe tapping on pedals, overdrive this overdrive, this boost. And my volume was always wide open. Precursor, there's no right or wrong way to do this. This is just how I do it. For anyone listening, if you do it the way I'm about to say I don't, keep doing it the way you're doing it. I'm Switzerland here. But I felt that I was always getting too much output, really, and I wasn't controlling my dynamics, and there was no dynamics at all because it was just all this volume and output. And once I started messing with the volume and living the majority of the time around between 6 and 8, I realized not only could I get that clean sound, but it was fuller and warmer, but with a touch of that little breakup with an overdrive on. But I had so much more dynamics, and I could control my entire sound so much more. In fact, I haven't used a volume pedal in years. I did a month with Tom Jones like a few months ago, and I just ended up getting a volume pedal for a few songs. And I was like, you know what? It was kind of the shit. I forgot. But I wasn't using it. I wasn't using it the way I use of like my volume knob. It was more of like for swells and stuff like that. But I know a lot of people use a volume pedal to control their dynamics too. And it just, you lose all your tone and your sound and your output from that, rather than the last thing that's going to your hands is the guitar itself, right?
Man, that is one of my favorite things to do with a fuzz. And I've made videos on this in the past, but like getting a great fuzz, and some of them do this and some of them don't. It depends on your mileage may vary, but like getting a fuzz, setting it up pretty loud, pretty dirty, and then just putting your guitar volume on 1, like just barely crack it so that there's barely any signal coming out of the guitar. And it gives you this, it'll be some of the best clean tone you've ever had, because it's not actually clean. And Tim Pierce talks about this all the time, and I agree with him that the best clean tones are not actually clean. They're a little bit saturated and a little bit dirty. And that's really interesting. You're not the only person I've heard talk about the overdrive after the fuzz. Josh Scott is a big fan of that as well.
I mean, every classic recorded fuzz sound typically was into a cranked Marshall or a Vox or something. So like running a fuzz into a clean amp can be cool, but it's so much more abrasive and strident. And there is something about that little bit of pillowy compression that an overdrive lends itself to the signal when it's after that fuzz tone that does give you a lot more dynamic control. Because I mean, a fuzz face is dynamic, but if there's nothing, if it's just going into something like a twin, it's just going to turn into an ice pick. So are you normally using like your broadcast or something for the drive typically?
I'm constantly switching it up. I I like the Duelist a lot. I keep going back to that pedal. I don't know why exactly. I think it's just I'm a very set it and forget it type of guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've gone through all of them. I have my phases with all of them. And then once touring gets really hectic and like we're on and off again and on and off again, there's so much going on that I just want to, is it working? Does it work? Does it sound good? I'm just going to go with that for now. And yeah, that's working for me right now. I tend to like dual. Well, you know, the first ever signature pedal we ever did was that Daedalus.
Yep.
And
they're like $600 on Reverb if you find one.
What?
Yeah.
Dang. Dang. Yeah, I've always enjoyed just dual pedals or dual overdrives, King of Tone style like that. And yeah, the broadcast is great. These days the broadcast is like the ultimate recording pedal.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
you know, it's essentially emulating a Neve console, but live too. I tend to use it more as a boost than an overdrive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I just kind of like like a blues breaker, or like the broadcast is very different. But if it was more traditional overdrive, like a Timmy style or a blues breaker, I'm not like a tube screamer fan really.
Damn right. It's because you're a man of class and taste and experience, and you know what
Duelist.
sounds good.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I know Zach just said it. Half of the Duelist is tube screamer.
No, the tube screamer is
use
fine.
that side.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, speaking of pedals, should we dip a rig to wrap this lovely interview up? All right. Absolutely. I got one here. Now, I'm not entirely sure what the username is on this guy.
Ooh.
It looks, I think it's A Steve O'Neill.
Dude.
So it could be A Steve O'Neill. I'm not sure. But what we got here, he plays with an Americana Heartland rock artist, and he's got a Novo-Ceres T, a Nash Esquire. That's mainly a backup for the Novo. He's got a Gretsch 6120, and then his pedal board, he's got a Polytune, an Argo, the new 1981 LVL, a Brown Protein, the GFI Orca, the Flint, the Deco, and he's hitting a Fender 57 Custom Deluxe.
Damn.
And
this is a classy rig.
I thought both of you guys would appreciate this setup. So
let's start with the guitars here.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
I mean, obviously, I'm a fan of the Novo, and nice little German carve on the Novo there.
Yeah.
Esquire is cool. You know, the Nash stuff is cool, I think, depending on the era. The earlier Nash stuff I found to be better than their more recent guitars, but, you know, that's personal preference. And then I'm really coming into a Gretsch phase, I think. I took my my Black Falcon out for a couple shows last weekend. And dude, I think they're slept on, man. Those big body Gretsches, the 6120 Country Gentleman, they look incredible. And as long as you can get away with them not feeding back on stage, they sound awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they will howl.
Yeah, they will.
All over my new record there's a White Falcon on it. It's just the secret machine. It's so good.
There's a jangle that you can't really get out of any other guitar. Like a Gretsch just the Gretsch sound is truly its own. It's pretty incredible.
And there's just something about, like, you know, part of the philosophy of gigging and playing a show is like, that I think sometimes gets lost, is you want to put on a show. And part of that is how you look and the gear. You know, that's why I'm such a proponent of like amps on stage. If you're paying money to go see a rock band in a venue, you want to see amps on stage and hear amps on stage. So yeah, props for the Gretsch, man. That's a great pick. Now, the pedal board, dude, this is, I mean, everything you need and nothing you don't, I feel like. I mean, the Brown, the Protein, I have one of those. And it's one of my favorite overdrives. I mean, Ariel, that's your dual stage situation.
Yeah, I got one of those too. They're great. They're
so good. I'm not familiar with the LVL.
Yeah, I was going to just ask the same.
That's the new 1981 inventions. Mr. Matt Hoops, he did the DRV, and this is his new boost overdrive thing. All the videos and stuff I've seen kind of bill it as more of an overdrive, but I think it's just like a boost that you can add a lot of breakup to. But it sounds cool. You know, I haven't played one yet, but it's, I think, mainly probably used as a booster. So something to slam into that brown to give some more juice.
Wouldn't you get more headroom from it or more clean from it if it was after the overdrive though, or no?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely get more of a volume push, but I feel like probably hitting that deluxe, it might be kind of moot. Maybe.
Right.
Yeah, hard to say.
Yeah.
But yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think you're right. Like, although those 57 Deluxes, I've got one, and they're surprisingly loud. They don't look like much, but they will move some air, man. And if you set them right with the, because that Tweed circuit has the interactive volumes, you can actually get a pretty good clean-ish edge of breakup, high headroom-ish sound, relatively speaking. They're not, there's more to Tweed Deluxes than just the buzzy, farty Tweed sound,
Yeah, the hey, my sound sort of thing.
Yeah. And then, man, bonus points. Anytime I see a deco on a board, it's bonus points for me. I still think that is the most slept on Strymon pedal out there because people don't really understand what it's supposed to be, which is recreating a studio effect from the 50s where you would take two tape machines basically and link them together and get, flanging and tape echo and all kinds of stuff, plus the tape saturation. It's a workhorse pedal.
Yeah. Very cool.
My only thing I'd say is this is just personal preference, but the deco is amazing. And the Flint, assuming that's his main trem, 57 Deluxe doesn't have tremor, does it?
No.
So I personally just love and feel like trem should always be your last thing if you're wanting it to feel and sound like amp. Yep. And I know the tape thing is kind of the same thing. It's you have to just pick your poison. I would probably personally pick Flint last, but that's just me.
It's an interesting question on your philosophy, your signal flow philosophy, if you will, because I understand how he's got this set up here is basically treating the deco like going to tape in a studio, right? Where you're getting that like final bit of tape saturation and compression. And then if you wanted like a studio slapback effect, but the fact that he's going in front of the amp, I actually agree, Ariel. I would put the Flint last to get that classic Fender, like spring being modulated by the tremolo thing, which is such a cool effect. So, yeah.
Sure.
Man,
it's not really
I think this is everything you need. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a Telly style guitar. Sorry, Rhett. You go ahead.
No. This all you.
I was just going to say, you said the Esquire is the backup to the Novo. So I think it is two guitars that really complement each other well. And obviously for the Americana thing, you have to have a guitar with a Bigsby. It's an unwritten rule. And there's no better guitar than the Gretsch for that. I feel like the neck pickup on Telly style guitars is elusive these days. And clearly with this rig, I mean, there isn't even a neck pickup on the Esquire, but there's some people who are still such purists on Tellys or Telly style guitars that like that neck pickup has to be a traditional style rather than what is that, like a P90 or a humbucker, mini humbucker, Goldflow?
It's a P45. It's like half the power of a normal P90.
Gotcha. Regardless, I'm into it, and something like that is going to match output a lot better to that Gretsch, so he's not going to have mismatched levels when switching guitars. Like we all experience that often. So kudos. It's nice.
Man, this is probably the most pro rig we've seen in a while. Like even just little details, like the Tweed is in a Rode case. He's got the guitar vault next to the like this is a pros rig.
Yeah.
I got to give it 10 out of 10 shoils, man. This is a perfect score for me. Even down to the pedal board. Like the pedal board's the right size. The board, the pedals are spaced out enough. They're not cramped together for your Instagram, shot or whatever. Like this is a pros rig. I respect it.
Sure. All right. Ariel, what would you give this rig?
Based on what Rhett said, I agree with all that. But at the same time, assuming maybe this isn't the only gig he does, he's out on the town doing other work, you can throw the Novo, the Esquire in a double bag. You could toss the Gretsch in a bigger like mono bag. You could one trip that shit. And if you can one trip your rig, it's a 10 out of 10 for me. Come on.
Hell yeah.
I think I agree with I would put the Flint at the end. So just to be different, I'm going to give it a 9.9.
Oh, we almost had the triple crown, the three tens.
I can't do
I was
it.
going to
I'm
remove
sorry.
like a point, like a 0.2 for the Flint thing, but I respect personal preference. And, maybe 9 years ago, I didn't care about signal chain. Like this guy clearly knows signal chain and understands it, but like we have to understand that most people just plug pedals in. And, and I was one of those people for a very long time when I was younger, and it's all good. It's good.
You do you.
10. You do you.
Love it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Ariel, thanks so much for joining us, man. This was excellent. So,
My pleasure.
Yeah, man. You're
So
welcome back
you guys.
anytime here on Dipped in Tone. We will have everything, all the pertinent details to your tour, your upcoming album linked in the description box down below. And we'll talk to you soon, man.
Yeah. Go buy it. Stream
Much
it.
love.
Go buy it and then stream it every day for all eternity, right?
Yeah, go buy it, but don't listen to it. Just listen to it on Spotify.
Right.
Is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Well, that was excellent. Ariel's so great, man. He came through Atlanta like, I want to say 6 months ago, and I got to see him play. And his live show is killer. That band he's put together is just unbelievable. So, check out his tour dates. If he's coming to a town near you, absolutely go out and see him play.
For sure. And take his advice. Don't be afraid of retuning your guitar, because I know that I have only ever experimented with DAD-GAD and like dad fad, F sharp, whatever, and things like that. And for a while, I did a lot of, there was a dashboard confessional tuning that was just D, A, D, D. It was just all D's and A's that they used on a bunch of stuff, because I went to high school in the 2000s. So, so of course we did that, but I've never really tried open tuning. I can't physically play slide, but hearing him talk, I feel like I should try it just to play, fretted, because it's something I've never experimented with.
It's an excellent way to break out of ruts in your playing. And oftentimes, if I want to sit down and just play, like just for me, just to have fun, I'll go to an open tuning, because I find it just lets me let go of a lot of the same licks and ideas I've been playing over and over and over again. It forces you to think about the guitar differently, which I think is a good thing. So, yeah.
Always. But
All
yeah,
right.
so shill time.
Shill time.
Shill we?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh my God. Do you have one? You ready to go?
Yeah, I do. So I have a friend. His name is Mike Tempson, and he runs Seeker Electric Effects. And let's see here. Oh, there it is. So when we did I did the episode with Joey on the show when you were out of town. We talked about how I never really played a Zonk machine.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I'll just make you one based off the specs of what the original supposedly are supposed to be. And so he did. And it's really weird. But Mike is an amazing guy. He's an amazing builder. He uses a lot of like the right stuff, and he doesn't gouge people for it, which I find refreshing. Not that everyone's gouging, but I do feel like the realm of almost bespoke, really high-end fuzzes, people get
pricey,
pretty pricey, and people real proud of their work, and as they should be. But there's a limit, and I think that Mike lives within that limit. And he sent me this beautiful Zonk, and it sounds wacky and weird, and like I've heard them sound. So
I have a few of Mike's pedals that he sent me a little while ago, and they are excellent. And I actually appreciate the simplicity of the design on the pedal. Like it's pretty, minimalist in terms of its branding and the look, which is something that doesn't often happen in this market. So, nice.
Yeah. He just really straightforward, and we worked on a couple projects together. I've helped do some boards for him and stuff, and he's a really nice guy and a great designer. So check him out, Seeker Electric Effects.
All right, my shill is this lovely microphone I've been doing the pod with today. So this is the UA SD1. I'm trying it out. I swapped it from my my trusty SM7, which obviously this is supposed to be a competitor to the SM7.
Right.
They did send this out to me. Actually, I should say we shot some stuff at UA's headquarters a few weeks ago.
Right.
And they sent us home with a little care package, and this was in it. It's pretty nice. I haven't really decided yet as to which I would recommend. I think I'm going to do a Gear Talk video about these mics because
Sure.
for years I've always said the SM7 is, if you're going to have one mic to do everything, this is the one mic to do everything with. And now there's a competitor out there. So
doesn't that one, the SD1, have like it'll accept phantom power and it's louder, right? Can it do
I
that?
believe so. I'm using my Cloud Lifter right now, so I'm going through the same signal chain that I use my SM7.
Right.
But yeah, I do believe that it can eliminate the need for a Cloud Lifter, because that is the big drawback of the SM7 is it's super gain hungry, and you need a really, really either strong preamp with a really low noise floor, or more than likely you need to buy a Cloud Lifter or inline line booster to get this thing up to spec. But yeah, the SD1.
As a quick aside, I was denied my mark for Mythos because there's like a hi-fi shelf stereo, just not even studio equipment, just like at home stereo equipment, a speaker called a Mythos.
You mean your
trademark?
Oh, okay.
So I'm like, I can prove that I own this. I've had records of me selling things under this name for over 12 years now. So it's not a big deal. One day I'll get it. I just have to pay a lawyer a lot of money to go fight the government for me. But that's called an SD1.
Yeah.
And so is the Boss Super Overdrive. Maybe it's because it's Japanese or something. There's like a rule there, but I remember when it came out, I was like, "Oh, they're gonna have to change that name," but I guess not.
Well, I mean, it's like, microphone,
or maybe you can't.
Guitar
maybe
pedal.
You can't mark that.
I don't know. I someone who's a copyright trademark lawyer, let us know in the comments. But
please,
yeah, no, it's a cool mic. I haven't made my mind up yet as to which one I would buy if I was in the market. I mean, it's hard to beat this. And it's almost like, if you're starting a podcast in 2023, it's a standard issue. You got to have an SM7, or they have that newer, the baby brother for the podcaster setup. Or whatever. But yeah,
I don't know. It's pretty sexy looking.
Getting in the mic game. I do also like a little detail that I like is where the mic jack is. It's just on the back instead of
it's up on the top here.
The SM7 having like up on the top with this little cable. It's never been a problem other than on my setup when the cable comes over the top right here. I can't get the mic positioned exactly where I want it because of this little angle here. But that's such a minute little detail. So
it's just how the 7 always was, and the B just followed suit. I guess tradition.
Yeah. There you go.
But again, thanks to our patrons over on Patreon. Like we said at the beginning of the show, if you want to support the channel, check out the links in the description below, learn about the tiers, and learn about joining the community that vibes with Dipped in Tone. What we can't say their names, the Dipsters or the...
Listen, it came up in an episode months ago. They decided amongst themselves that they wanted to go with that name. So it is... we'll let the community decide. It's a self-policing situation over there, Yes. So yeah, thanks to all of the aforementioned supporters. If you want to join them, links in the description. Also subscribe while you're down there. It really does genuinely help the channel, help the podcast out when you do that. If you're on Apple Podcasts, leave us a fine review. Helps new people find the show. Yeah. And thanks to Sweetwater for sponsoring today's episode. All of the links are in the description and the show notes. Go on Sweetwater. Get you a new microphone,
Yeah. How about that mics. New UA?
How about that new UA SD1?
Or one of those new JHS pedals, the Ross pedals. We didn't even talk about that.
Yeah.
They look, all about it. I haven't played them yet, but they sure look cool, and they're a fair price.
They look cool. We should talk about them on the next episode. So
we'll do it.
Awesome.
All right, everybody.
See y'all.